Recently, I was faced with the realities of suicide when two families within my ecosystem lost their sons. I was devastated with the knowledge that two mothers would not be able to hold their sons anymore, not able to talk to them, and plagued with just one question: why? I went home that evening and gathered my kids up and hugged each one of them and prayed over the ones who live by themselves. It was indeed a somber moment. In Matthew 18 verse 3, Jesus says, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." So it is clear that God's heart is within all the children of the world. So what happens when a 7-year-old attempts to commit suicide? Who is to blame? Today, I explored this topic with Brian Mulipah, who shares his personal story and is an example of hope for all who are going through depression or mental health challenges. Warm welcome to you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that when we talk about mental health, it's not an easy subject to talk about. And a lot of people I assume, need to be very courageous to come on a platform and talk about it. So I really appreciate you being on the EN show today. So tell me, who is Brian? What do you do professionally?
So I help men and women who struggle with compulsive behaviors such as drinking, smoking, gambling, sex addiction, helping them to stop their addictions and prevent relapse long term.
Okay. And how's that been for you in terms of how did you find your way into that field?
Well, it's like helping my friends.
Yeah.
That's where I've been. I used to struggle with addiction to alcohol and diazepam, those tablets.
Those tablets.
Yeah.
The little tablets that we get from any average doctor when you're struggling to go to sleep, are those the ones?
Yeah, the blue ones.
The blue ones.
Yes.
And so why? I suppose let's start from the beginning. In our research about you, you shared that at a very young age you were troubled. You faced a number of different challenges in your life, and it caused you to reach a point where you were not happy anymore. Can you tell us about that moment for you? And being very cognizant of the fact that these are very sensitive topics, as much as you can share.
All right. So I remember I was 7 years old.
Right.
So one day we were going to school. I was going to a nice school. So we're going to school, and then one day my dad says, "You're not going to school. You're going to your uncle's house, visiting your uncle's house." We're this rich uncle in the family. So we visit the uncle's house, and it's all nice, and we get these old clothes. So they gave me a brown short and a cream shirt with 2 buttons on. So they made me wear these clothes. We were there with my cousins and my sisters and stuff. Everyone is there. And then later on, these people with cameras came in, the big cameras. So they just put the camera down and then they left. My cousins and my sisters left and they ran away. I was the dumb one in that case, so I stayed and I was staring into the camera. And the day went on, and then it was just boring. We're playing. Next day we go back to school. So when I went back to school the next day, the moment I walked into the class, I was in grade 2 then, everybody just burst into like laughter and like cheering on, like, "Yay, Brian, straight kid. And my teacher came to me and she was asking me, "Brian, where do you live?" I live in, we were living in Highlands then. I live in Highlands. But no, Brian, we saw you on TV. You live in this other neighborhood. Who did you live with? So what I later on learned was my uncle was looking for money. So he was fundraising, and he pretended, or they borrowed me and my siblings and cousins, pretending that they were taking care of street children.
Wow.
So for me, I later on asked my mom and she told me about it. But for me, it was more like, why would my mom want me to be like a street kid? So the interpretation I got was, She hates me. I am useless, and I'm just a bad person.
Wow.
Yeah. So from there, so this is day one. So 2 days later, something else happened again at home, where I decided, okay, you know what? I think I'm a problem in this house. It's better I kill myself. So the next day I went back to school.
Wait a minute. You were 7 years old.
Yeah, I was 7 in grade 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So next day I go back to school. I decided to commit suicide. Actually, I decided the night before. So next day I actually went on with my plan. We used to have like fields at school. So we had a top field and a bottom field. And so we were told you don't play here on top. If you play here, you fall down and then you die. So I thought that's a good idea.
Which is what a teacher would say if they don't want you to be on the field.
Exactly.
Right.
So I went there, and then I jumped and rolled, hoping that I was going to actually die. So that was my first attempt for suicide.
So when you found that you were tumbling down the hill and you picked yourself up, what was that for you? Do you remember that moment or?
Yeah, I still remember it like it was today in the morning.
Really?
Yeah. So I rolled down, and then I hit my head on the ground. It was a bit painful. And then I looked up in the sky. I thought I was actually dead. I was in heaven. I looked up in the sky and I saw something like a figure in the clouds. And it was like a person holding a big book, like a Bible. And then he just took one step forward. And then I was like, oh, so maybe when I grow up, I'm going to go around, travel around the world telling people about Jesus. So then the bell rang at that time as well. I just got up and ran back to class. It was break time at that time. Yeah.
And so at what point in your life did you remember this? Was that a memory that you lived with throughout your life, or did something trigger that for you?
No, I actually forgot about it until 2017. There's this thing there's a tool that I got when I was doing my counselor training. It's called the trauma egg. So you just sort of draw a trauma egg. It just helps you to bring back memories. But then in 2017, I was in South Africa somewhere on a leadership training course. And then they say, tell your story. So I just did my trauma egg thinking, and then this came up.
Wow.
It was a shock when it came up. Thinking, whoa, yeah, those days. And then I went and I shared for the first time.
So it was buried deep inside.
It was long gone, yes.
So that was the first time. Yeah. I know that there were two other instances that came up in your life when you were 14 and when you were 21.
Yeah.
Can you briefly tell us about those instances?
So when I was 14, I was moved from a school that I liked I was in Form 2, so I moved to a different school. What happened was, actually, I was at, should I say the name of the school? I don't know if I can.
Names.
No names, okay.
Yes. So you were at a high school?
I was at a nice high school.
Right.
I was playing rugby. I was captain of the team.
Right.
So I was, I loved the school. I loved the badge of the school. The colors, school color was blue. Loved it. And unfortunately, my dad did not want me to play rugby. He wanted me to play soccer or to be running track. I was really fast. I was really sporty. So because I was playing rugby, he decided, oh, no, I'm going to move you to a different school. So one day, when we're now in Form 2, a day before we're opening schools, like 2 days before, the Sunday before, I think schools were opening on Tuesdays.
Right.
So on the Sunday, he just brings a green shirt. You're no longer going back to this school. You're going to this new school.
Wow. No reason?
No reason, nothing. And then he gave me his trunk. He had this old, the school trunk. I think it was from the 70s.
Right.
So it was brown, not black. It's supposed to be black. So I go to this new school. And I considered myself not really smart in class. But in terms of sport, I was the best.
Right.
I was really, really good. So I get to this school, I meet the teachers, and the very first question, I remember this one teacher comes to me, hi, what's your name and where are you from? My name is Brian Mulipah and I am from Harare. Oh, you're from Harare, so do you play karate? And I thought, do I play karate? And so I just thought he was a dumb guy. And then they asked me about sport. What sport do you play? And I said, I play rugby. He says, there's no rugby here. Okay, I play cricket. There's no cricket here. Okay, I swim. And then the guy looks at me and says, so apparently, I then later on learned they didn't have rugby, they didn't have any other sport except for soccer and athletics, running the track.
Which is something he should have told you at the beginning.
Yeah, he should have just told me.
Right.
We have soccer and...
So what led you to then saying, this isn't it for me?
Yeah, so, yeah, from that point on, I had, there was also some bullying happening. People just took my food and stuff. And then that incident, I thought, well, my life is gone. I hated it. I just hated it. Hated the school. So I decided, okay, at some point I decided, I think it was the second week or something, I decided I was going to just, kill myself. No, there was third term. Second term is when I moved. And then, so because I moved and I missed home, missed family, missed everything and stuff. And the holidays came, went back home, and I discovered nobody missed me. Wow. And as in, I'm blanking on the dates, but when I went back home, some of the guys in the class used to write letters for their parents. I love you, Dad, and stuff. I love you. And then I did the same thing. I copied the other guys and then just wrote and sent to my dad. I get home and my dad had kept that letter. And what is this? I just walked in. What is this, you stupid boy? And all that rubbish. He throws it down and it marked my letter, like 1 out of 10. And then he gave me a 1 out of 10. And then he says, I'm so generous, I gave you a 1, you deserve a 0. So at that time, I just thought, what, this guy hates me so much, and I hated myself also. I should not exist. And then at some point, when I went back to school, I decided I was going to kill myself. So I wrote my letter, hi, this is Brian, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to be dead, take my clothes, give to, street children. If you take my clothes, I'm going to be a ghost, and I'll come back and I'll smack all of you. So I went on, I was going to hang myself. So there was this room at the agricultural department where I just picked this room. So I was going to hang myself. And then fortunately, the rope was rotten. It was bad rope, so it broke.
Yeah. So Brian, we're going to take a break, and it's not the ideal spot to, but I just want people to be aware of some of the issues that drove you to that point. We're not telling the story just for sensationalizing suicide, but I think there's a deeper lesson that's there. So if you're watching EN, I'm with Brian Mulipah, and we are talking about mental health. Stay tuned for more.
I dance for a living, not an orthodox career. My name is Sean Mambere. I'm an award-winning dance choreographer. Well, I've built a brand from dancing, and I earn money too. The internet has made my life easy and so much fun. Well, for starters, I get to interact with existing and potential clients who attend my dance classes. I have the opportunity to showcase my work to a large group of people at the same time. Who wouldn't want that for their business? Dancing is my life, and I need something that helps me grow and network with people in my field of work. I have won numerous awards from the work that I do, and I'm proud of myself. If it wasn't for the internet, I highly doubt anyone would know me. The broadband has helped me learn, grow, and enjoy what I do. I am living in the moment. Are you?
Pond 5.
Welcome back to EN, and I am with Brian Mulipah, and we are talking about mental health. So Brian, you were mentioning the fact that you were 14 years old, you had moved schools, not with your own will, and there was a lot of bullying involved. And that was probably your second attempt in terms of taking your own life. Tell me about your third incident.
Third one, I was 21, and I already started drinking. I started drinking at 14 when I was at this new school. So at this school, something bad also happened at home. So I decided, you know what, something bad with my dad. I thought he hated me. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna kill myself. How I'm gonna kill myself? I didn't like pain, so I didn't want to hang myself. I tried to cut myself, but I couldn't find a knife at that time. So I found a nail. So I tried to cut, but it was just too painful. So then I heard that there was a guy who drowned in alcohol. He drank and then he just woke up dead. So that's a good idea. So I decided I was going to drink until I just dropped dead. So that night I went all out and I drank. I still remember the feeling I had. After the whole drinking, I went back home. I remembered I had pain all over my body, from the top of my head going right down to the sole of my feet, both feet actually. Yeah.
And so it's funny that you mentioned that. My question to you is, do you think when you're looking back on those three incidences, what ties them all together? You've mentioned a number of issues. You've mentioned bullying. You've mentioned the fact that there was a lot of negative conversations coming, or the relationship with you and your dad wasn't what you would have wanted. And there was a lot of pain. So when you look back, what are the things that you recognize as triggers that may have led you to try and take your life during those three incidences? And my next question is, how come you weren't successful in any of them? Would that have been an indication for a cry for help, or what do you think was the result of that?
Yeah, you know what? I actually love this question because people don't ask this question. People just, like when I share my story,
Yeah.
people think that I was moved from one school, went to another, and then I decided to kill myself. And which is not the whole truth. There was a lot of stuff that was happening, like from childhood.
Right.
Things like Zidzoro, from someone that I look up to, like parents, teachers, Zidzoro kushiba kushata, things like that. So I grew up with this hate for myself. So, but it was always buried by, when situation is different, things change and I'm happy and stuff. But I had this thing underneath me, which was self-hate.
Yep.
Okay. And then no one to tell, no one to cry to as well, because the people to cry to are the ones who are attacking me.
Right.
So like, for example, age 21, I tried to kill myself. It was not just because I had this one conversation with my dad, now I'm going to kill myself. I hated myself since I remember maybe age 6. Okay. I actually used to pray from grade 2, which was grade 2 and then grade 6 actually, yes. Grade 6 up until I was 23, I used to pray, God, I am sorry for the sins I committed. But then before that, grade 2 up until grade 6 again, I prayed every day before I went to bed, God, please kill me.
Wow.
And he just, I don't know why he didn't. Wow. Maybe he has got plan B.
Yes. Clearly he has a plan B.
Yeah.
Because now, putting all of that history together, it's gotten you into a point where you are now helping other people.
Yeah.
So before we even get into what your work is now, you mentioned before that you grew up in a relatively okay neighborhood, and many of those young people were also drinkers. And so, what bonded you guys with you and your friends? What was that bond that brought you together?
Yes, I think because there were a lot of guys that I used to drink with. There were a lot of people in the neighborhood. Some guys I drank with, some guys I didn't. The guys that I drank with, we were bonded by pain. So when I listened to everyone's story, especially the guys who were close to me, I wouldn't want to trade places with them. There was pain in my family, but I would not want to trade with them because there was just, I remember one guy, there was 3 of us who were really, really close. The one guy, he's now late. I remember this one year, he had dinner at his house once.
Once?
Like in 1 year, they just left food for him once on Christmas Day. And then the rest of the year, he wouldn't eat at his house.
Because he didn't want to eat, or because they were not providing food for him?
They never left food for him.
And this was his biological mother and father?
No, he had a stepmother, and then biological father.
Wow.
So it was a stepmom thing. And then the other guy who I was also close with, his dad would just come and say, no one's eating in my house.
Today?
Yeah. And then the whole family doesn't eat the whole night. That was his real dad and his real mom. So things like that. And we were really close. And I remember the one guy I only discovered because the guy who ate once in 1 year, he used to come to my house to eat every time. And I hated it. Not because I didn't want it or food, but hey, let's go play over there. Don't come to my house every time.
Yeah.
And then he kept on laughing. You just come and just eat and then laugh. And then one day he just said, Brian, you don't understand anything in life. The last time I ate at my house was last year on Christmas. And then you see this guy that we hang around with, yeah, his dad, that's what he does. That's why, because the other guy used to come to my house and we used to grow carrots like in the backyard. He would grab one full, no, not carrots, onions, the big ones. He just grab the whole thing and then gobble it and eat it. And I thought this guy was a man, he was strong, And then discovered, no, the guy hadn't eaten in like 3 days. He would just...
So there's a lot of, there are a lot of things that happen in families.
Yeah, family stuff.
And there are a lot of family secrets that then evolve and get people to a point where they start contemplating. So I was talking to a friend of mine, Brian, and they were telling me about how when they tried to take their life, it's almost like there was a whisper that was there to encourage them and maybe even justify. Oh, you want to take your life, don't worry about it. No one will miss you. Or, you know what? No one will cry for you because, how many people have died and people have still lived on. Did you ever experience that at any one of those given moments? Or was it you just taking a pause and saying, you know what? I want to take my life, but I also want to be heard with the pain that I have.
Yeah, for me it was more of, because I remember like all three incidences, I still remember how I felt it, why. For me it was more of, you know what, I thought I was a burden to people. So if I leave, they're going to have a good life. So it was more of excusing myself from hurting other people, because I didn't want my existence to be a burden or some pain to other people.
And it's funny you say that because a lot of people assume that people who take their lives is a selfish act.
Yeah, yes.
So it may not actually be selfish in that, or it could be that someone is so deeply pained that they feel like, let me just erase myself.
Exactly. That's how I took it. And I still remember there are other people who also took their lives from the neighborhood. And knowing who they were, I kind of, just thought, well, this guy, I understood the pain. Not that I'm condoning it. It's not something to do. Don't do it.
We don't, definitely.
But,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think these are conversations that need to be had. So
Definitely.
that, because the statistics currently say that there are more male children who are successful with suicide than female children. The statistics are saying that there's an increase in the number of suicides as well. Is it all economical factors that are pushing the number of suicides? I frankly don't think so. But the research is out there, and I encourage anyone who is interested in this topic to go online and to also see what the research is saying. But for me, I think there's a valid conversation that needs to happen in families to try and address why our children are locking themselves up in rooms, not talking to anyone, and the issue of affirmation. You talk about how affirmation is important, and you even mentioned it before. If you had affirmation in your life, do you think you would have gone through many of these situations? Definitely
not. I would not have attempted anything, because I think for me as a guy, and but the males, we technically don't have people to talk to.
Yeah.
Like for me, maybe it was a cry for help, but I just didn't have anyone to talk to about it. But imagine if I knew I could approach someone and say, hey, this is how I feel, this is what happened, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what I'm thinking. And then that person doesn't judge me or tell me, suck it up, you're a boy. I would have, it would have been better.
So society doesn't have space for men to feel or to talk about their emotions. So we're going to pick it up from there. This is EN. We are talking to Brian Mulipah. We are talking mental health. Don't go anywhere. See you soon.
I need a hero. I need a hero today.
That's right.
Talco, always connected. There for you more than any other.
all the time, anytime, anywhere. It's velocity.
Welcome back to EN, and we're talking mental health. Brian, we were just about to talk about your neighborhood and the number of people who you grew up with. Where are those people? What's happening in their lives?
Well, there was a lot of us,
Right.
first of all, and everyone is dead, except for the four of us. Four of us got to live on.
How
to tell
many
the
were
story.
you?
At least 50.
Out of 50,
Yeah,
only 4 are living.
yeah. And most of them died before age 30.
Wow.
One guy died after age 30. Most people, yeah, before 25, I would think, in their 20s, early 20s.
So this is almost worse than a pandemic. This is a pandemic.
Yes, it's been a pandemic all along. It's just that it was happening in the other side of the street. Because like this is Highlands, like where I grew up. So I grew up in Highlands. I used to hang around in Highlands, Greendale, and Roseville area.
Right.
So it's just those. But then this is the other side of town. So it was just, it's quiet because, you know, we mind our own business and nobody talks about it.
Right.
Yeah. But now that it's in the high density areas, it's like, whoa, now we can
it's a
see
problem, but it's been a problem.
It's been all along, yes. And I'm talking about the 90s here. Like I grew up in the 90s. This is when we were doing drugs. This is when we're doing, you know, all sorts of, these risky behaviors. And people are dying then in the 90s, 2000s, early 2000s. And then now we're in around 2021. It looks like, whoa, where is this coming from?
But it's been there.
It's been around, yeah.
So you have now gotten into the space of working with young people, which I think is truly a blessing. Tell me about some of the work that you're doing, and also just to advise us that if, as a parent, what do I need to look out for? And as a young person who is going through some of the struggles that you grew up in, what would you advise them?
Yeah, so my work, normally I'm focusing on addiction, but the primary stuff I'm dealing with is shame. So it's the root of addiction. So when someone comes to me and they're struggling with crystal meth addiction, like Mutoriro addiction, I don't tell the person, stop Mutoriro. No, I go back to why are they even taking Mutoriro? What happened? So the first question I ask myself is, okay, why is this person in pain? And then we talk about that for a while. So when we deal with the roots, the fruits and the branches naturally just disappear.
But that must be a really hard topic to talk about, because I don't know if people are conscious about their pain. Like you were saying, it's very deep seated in someone. How do you get it out? Do you and is there a process that you go through for someone to then acknowledge the fact that yes, I'm in pain and this is how I need to deal with it?
Yeah. So when I sit down with someone talking, the first thing I want to do is I want to tell them when they come, they think I'm a psychologist, I am a doctor, I'm this big person. So I have to sit down and let them see and feel that I am just human. And normally I just tell my side of a story, what happened, how I got here, and who I am, like an introduction. So when I do that, depending on how we connect, so I just don't go there and start talking about problems.
So you create a safe space.
Yeah, my stuff first.
Right.
So my stuff on the table, and then they say, oh, this guy is actually, okay, I could trust him. And then from there, things come out.
Okay. Yeah, and so some of the things that you would advise parents, let's say I've got children and I'm not really sure where their mental health is. How do I address my child? What do I need to look out for? What do I need to do?
I would say from here, okay, there's no one size fits all,
Right.
first of all.
Right.
But the opposite of all of this is just connection. Like one guy named Dean Sherman, he's an old guy, he said, every problem in the world is a problem of relationship. And I think that's really, really true. So someone has got depression, someone has got struggling with anxiety, addiction. The problem we have right there is relationship. So if it's addiction, I know there is a relationship problem, which means there's a disconnection somewhere. which is why they also say the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. So parents connect with the children. Are you connecting? You are not connecting if you're lecturing. Okay, you're not listening if you're lecturing. So could you sit down and instead of lecturing, instead of asking, why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? Ask them to connect with you, like to do with the future. How are you feeling?
Talk to me like a real person. Talk to me
yes.
like...
Humanize me.
Yes, humanize me.
Yes.
Humanize me. I like that. And I think our default as parents sometimes could be to take the hard road. Because hard equals learning lesson equals success. That's how we were raised. But I think it's a different generation right now. What are the things that, and so you're talking about affirmations. How important are affirmations?
They work like magic. Affirmations, encouragement, and just touch. Just holding your child, just touching the hand. Stuff that you do with your body, you also do with your brain. So it's not, you don't just touch someone and then it ends there. No, there's something that also happens in the brain. So for example, we've got anxiety issues going on, a lot of issues with anxiety. When you touch someone, when in a safe environment, in a non-sexual way, of course. Mm-hmm. So when you just, especially as parents, holding a child like this helps him produce this brain chemical called serotonin, which you produce when you want to sleep or calm down. Guess what? Your anxiety is high, and then there is touch, you produce serotonin. What happens? You calm down. So right now we have a lot of children who are being born anxious already. Well, there's just no touch anymore.
So we've stopped hugging our kids. We've stopped, touching them or holding their hand. And, I think it's a big challenge to parents to say, are we spending quality time with our kids? What are the conversations that we're having in the house? Are we throwing money at problems? To say, oh, you've got this issue. Oh, I've noticed that even with little babies. Mupe iPad. Kana mupe phone. And that becomes the quick solution.
Yeah.
Instead of just spending time and quietening the baby down. So is it this new generation? Is this the effects of technology?
Yeah, I think it's the effects of parenting.
Effects of parenting.
We are parenting our children wrong. So that's why these are just symptoms of the way we're parenting, symptoms of what's happening in their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like addiction, symptom of something that happened in this child's life and now is showing up as addiction. Okay, you want to solve that thing? Okay, look at what happened in the past. Okay, children are addicted to whatever they are. Children are a problem. The thing is, there are no bad children, but we do have bad parents.
And so this is the thing. I think when young people take their lives, or not when one person takes their life, there's this cultural perception that you have to bury them with everything. Everything that they possess, everything that they touch, everything that they've owned must be buried with them. It's almost like you're erasing them from the face of this world. And I've always asked the question, why are we not making accountable the people who have caused this person to commit suicide? It's almost like you have put so much of the blame on the person who's taken the life. But there's we're not shining on the light of the root issues that are there, which I think is where you're going at.
Yeah.
And for a person who is struggling with depression, as we wrap up this segment, what are the one or two nuggets that you can share with them? What should they do?
If you can, number one, if you can move first, just move from where you are. Not necessarily moving house. Like, for example, if I'm depressed, I'm depressed. Get up and do something. Okay. So remember, whatever you do with your body, you do with your mind. If, for example, if I wanted to get depressed right now, what would I do? I would sit still, look down, breathe shallow. I could actually generate depression. That's just one technical side. But talk about it. If you can find someone to talk with, to just share. That's how I got help. I was struggling with addiction. Nobody told me that when I stopped. The guys I was talking to never told me to stop drinking. So just sit down and say, okay, Brian, what's happening? How are you feeling? and I'll tell them how I'm feeling, and nobody would say why. Nobody would say this feeling is bad or this feeling is from the devil.
So there was no judgment.
Zero judgment.
Okay.
And just connecting with what mostly helped me, I think, was the type of people, because we all had problems. So because of that, I just felt, okay, this person can't judge me, because wow, what they're going through is, we had similar challenges.
Yeah.
So with depression, if you can just find someone that you can just share with, someone who's safe, of course, who's not going to end up posting on Facebook.
Right.
That could help.
And so, Brian, I think for me, the last words of advice to men, because for me, it was an alarm clock that went off in my head. I realized that men are in need. I realized that a lot of our efforts have been on empowering women, but we've really neglected the boy child. And what would that piece of advice be for another male who is struggling in a society that tells him that you need to be a man?
I think let's talk, first of all. We need to talk as men. But then there's also, it's hard. You don't just go to talk to anyone, right? But if you look for help, there is a lot of help right now. It's just that you might be looking in the wrong place. People might be looking in the wrong places. So if you can just find some people to talk to, I think some churches have groups like that,
right,
where people just sit down and as men, or as people rather, and sit down and share what's happening in your life, how you're taking it, and what you're thinking.
So number one is that you're not alone.
You're definitely not alone.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
Brian, we come to the end of our program, and I am so thankful for your participation and your contribution. Thank you so much for being on the EN show. And I hope that anyone who is listening has made a conscious decision to reach out to someone and share their pain and tell their story. So for anyone who's watching, we will make sure that we have information on our page for any resources that are available for counseling services, because on this show, we're not talking about suicide because it is glamorous to talk about. We are talking about suicide and mental health and depression because we want to change the narrative. And we want these conversations to come into your household with your loved ones. So please, 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 if you're watching this show, reach out. You're not alone. And if you're not listening to your child, let's start listening. If you're not listening to your young person in the house, maybe it could be a sibling or a cousin or whoever, let's start listening patiently, and let's help each other as a nation. Thank you, Brian, for being on the EN show.
Many thanks.
Thank you. This is EN, and as usual, we are sending love and light your way.